Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of MS Gamers Hut, and I'm your host, Ted Michael. How was some of those games last week? Did you find any of them interesting to play? This week I'm reviewing some RTS, or real-time strategy games. Real-time strategy is a subgenre of strategy video games, where the game does not progress incrementally in turns. In a RTS, the participants position and maneuver units and structures under the control of control to secure areas of the map and or destroy their opponent's assets. In a typical RTS, it is possible to create additional units and structures during the course of the game. This is generally limited by a requirement of expended accumulated resources. These resources are in turn guarded by controlling special units on the map and or possessing certain types of units and structures devoted to this purpose. More specifically, the typical game of RTS genre features resources gathering, base building, in-game technology developments, and indirect control of units. The term real-time strategy was coined by Brett Sperry to market Dune 2 in the early 1990s. The task a player must perform to succeed at a RTS can be very demanding, and complex user interfaces have evolved to cope with the challenge. Some features have been borrowed from desktop environments. For example, the technique of clicking and dragging to select all units under a given area. Though some games genres share conceptual and gameplay similarities with the RTS template, recognized genres are generally not subsumed to as RTS games. For instance, city building games, construction and management simulators, and games of real-time tactics are generally not considered to be real-time strategy. The first game I'm going to talk about is called Iron Marines. Among the many genres that feel at home on mobile, real-time strategy hasn't always been one of them. The app stores are full of RTS-like substances, but not a whole lot of the titles that PC gamers would be proud of to include among their favorites. Leave it to Ironhide Games Studios to change that dynamic with Iron Marines, a game that certainly deserves to wear the badge. It makes sense when you consider that Ironhide is the company behind the Kingdom Rush series and what is tower defense, if not RTS, played under very specific restraints. Here, the developers get to show off their understanding of how to create these same mix of strategies and urgencies in way too many other gets just right. While there is a story to set up Iron Marines, the narrative isn't the focus. A human mining colony has been invaded by unusual alien life forms, and the only hope of pulling everyone's fat out of the extraterrestrial fire is to send in the Iron Marines. They're led by a hero character who can be leveled up in various ways and be spawned and be swapped out for other heroes who each have their own unique abilities. The mysterious setting and grand orchestral soundtrack are balanced out by Ironhide's usual art style, which keeps things from getting too grim. The controls in battle are simple and fitting for mobile. Simply tapping on a hero or unit and dragging them to the next spot you want them will send them on their way, albeit usually ignoring anything they encounter until they are in place. That makes every move count, as dragging things around willy-nilly is a good way to get everyone wiped out. Both heroes and regular units regenerate quickly while not fighting, so you learn quickly not to bite off more than you can chew when engaging enemies. Still, Iron Marines never let you get comfortable, as you don't know exactly what they're up against with different types of aliens until you run into them for the first time, which is completely logical since you really wouldn't if you were suddenly face to face with creatures not of this world. The variety of opposing forces helps keep things both interesting and challenging right from the first few levels. And make no mistake about it, Iron Marines gets pretty tough pretty quickly, which is something experienced RTS players will appreciate, since you're constrained by both a maximum number of units, by resources to build them. The game makes every Marine you summon feel important. On top of that, many levels require you to both defend and installations and seek and destroy enemy forces at the same time, so there are few times you can sit back and simply play defense. In-game currency allows you to purchase both passive boosts and active abilities for the troops at your disposal. You can also buy single-use weapons and power-ups to help you out of particular tight spots. Said currency is the result of one of few qualms that people seem to have about Iron Marines at launch. Namely, was a paid download that features in-app purchases. The hesitancy is understandable, but since you can also earn currency by watching ads and tackling extra content like spec op missions, it doesn't feel like a big issue. In fact, the one thing that might give newcomers to RTS game pause is that you have to do some experimentation to figure out even basic actions like summoning reinforcements or taking and holding areas that will allow you to raise your maximum unit count. That is a gaming experience where hand holding would feel appropriate, but there are definitely times when a little more guidance would be nice. Once you've sunk some time into Marines, though, you're likely to be delighted by the way it works. Both our brain and your fingers simultaneously, which is what truly excellent RTS titles always manage to do. It is not easy, but when the going gets tough, the Iron Marines get going. If that's not a phrase that people say, consider it officially coined. The next game I'm going to review is Titanfall Assault. There are a fair number of quality first-person shooters on mobile, but by and large, the big first-person shooter franchises on console and PC haven't made the transition to phones and tablets that successfully, whether you stuck on the same genre or not. Titanfall Assault breaks free from the mirrors by keeping the action, characters, and other unique details from its brand and apply them to a genre that you might not expect. At last, there's not an agreed upon label for the combination of MOBA, tower defense, and collectible card game elements made famous by Clash Royale. Suffice it to say that for every head-to-head battle in Titanfall Assault, Each player has a deck of cards that represent pilots, titans, and burn cards. Any cards can be played to the battlefield. Then, when the ever regenerating store of supplies can pay its cost, and once it plays, it will carry out pre programmed behaviors in service of the goal of destroying your opponent's turrets. The additional details are what make the gameplay feel like Titanfall. Titans can't be summoned for the first minute of each 4-minute match, meaning it's pilot versus pilot to start. The developers make good use of vertical space in the map design, allowing them to bounce from buildings to buildings, slide down zip lines, and generally show off the mobility that defines them in the console games. Titan feel appropriately powerful when they are brought into play, forcing strategy changes, and sometimes swing the momentum in a heartbeat. And the use of hard points really ties it all together, as holding on to them long enough to provide enough victory conditions, one that comes into play more often than total base destruction, to be honest. Only certain units can capture or hold hard points, adding another level of strategy to the deck construction. You might have good counters ready for the strategies you run into more often, but if you don't take and hold enough strong points, it won't be enough. The other trappings of Titanfall Assault are likely what you'd expect. Every victory provides a reward cache which only yields its treasures over time, and you can only hold onto a few at any given time. Cards come in variety of rarities, from common to legendary, and you level up those cards by collecting enough duplicates and paying the game's common currency credits. If you've played any Clash Royale, and most of us have, it will all feel like second nature. Gameplay also looks and sounds like Titanfall, so the production values are on point. The only negative is not being able to experience it all at once. While you can zoom in and out and move your view around the battlefield, it never all fits on your screen. This isn't uncommon for MOBAs, but those usually only have you controlling one character or unit. For a game like Assault, it would be nice to be able to see everything that's unfolding and be able to consider all your options. There doesn't seem to be any limit to the appetite for good living multiplayer games, and any of them that arrive with the established name figure to have a leg up on the competition. With seasons, guilds, and other standard features built in, Titanfall Assault is definitely positioned to support any autistic community. While will one form, waiting to find out, is probably going to carry some of the same anticipation you get while waiting for Titans to drop. The next game I'm going to review is called Rome Total War. Porting classic games into mobiles have an unfortunate history of reminding us how badly a lot of games age. It isn't just video and sound that move on. Mechanics and accessibility do too. Just because Total War Rome is fondly remembered as the greatest Total War doesn't mean it still is, especially with a raft of potential porting problems standing in the way. Our first barrier is the controls. The big draw of Total War games are the huge historical real-time battles. Real-time strategy doesn't have a great record on touchscreen, but Total War has a secret weapon, the pause button. In the heat of action, you can select and direct units or your whole army with ease. You can also select multiple units by holding down on the screen and drawing around them, which is nearly useless. With the pause in the top left, though, it doesn't matter. You can just stop and fight, wander your eyes over the field and issue new orders to everyone out of place. Veterans of the series on PC will find you need to pause a lot more often than usual, but that's a small price to pay to get such an astonishing package on your mobile device. Battles are an incredible marriage of visual spectacle and tactical noise. The game rewards sensible use of combined arms, set spears with triumph against cavalry charges. Archers are deadly at range, but crumble in close fighting. It also encourages you to get around the flank and rear of the enemy's units to make them break and route quicker. There are siege engines for breaking sieges and silly fax fantasy units like German screeching women. Terrain plays a key role too, especially bridges and escapements. It's tempting just to select everything in your army and charge in, but doing so is suicide against a roughly equal force. With skill and cunning, you can beat superior armies. Equally, lack of forethought can see you defeated by weaker ones. Battles ebb and flow and need you to make tweaks and decisions on the fly. Total War Rome's legacy rests on another successful marriage, that of the tactical and strategy layers. Although you can play single battles and historical scenarios, most fights happen inside the campaign. This is a turn-based system which puts you in charge of a noble Roman family. From modest beginnings, you'll build and grow your cities, research technology, and expand your empire. The goal is to become Roman emperor and conquer most of the world. Anyone that plays a civilization-style game will be at home here, and the experience is as addictive as ever it was, nurturing your digital world and watching it grow. Except more so, because every fight isn't a quick animation of icons smashing into each other. It's a whole battle you can control if you wish and set to resolve instantly if you don't. At this level, there is naval transport and warfare too. Although you can't control sea battles in real time, your choices make a real difference, splitting and building armies between aggression and defense. You can even manage your family tree and their reunites of followers. Indeed, it's essential since since only family members can lead your armies. If you don't want to fight, you can take less violent options. There are chances to negotiate alliances, trade deals, and build political units like diplomats and spies. Soft power isn't a guaranteed route to victory, but it can help. All this has, of course, been part of the Total War franchise on PC for years, and there's almost nothing on mobile that can match this scale of depth. Watching hundreds of legionnaires scale ladders and leap into melee atop the wall of a Greek city-state on your mobile device screen is just incredible. It's even had a facelift. Textures are a little better than the 2004 PC original, and resolution is much sharper. Unfortunately, other aspects of the game haven't had a modernizing overhaul and show their age. The AI is a solid enough opponent on the field, but it's hopeless on the strategic map. Units wander back and forth without apparent aim. The players can exploit this in various ways, like quick strikes on undefended towns or avoiding undesirable battles. The overblown, annoying tutorial from the original is still intact too, as are the mouse-driven menus structures in the interface, and the app is a little prone to crashes. The autosave feature makes this a minimal problem, but it's still annoying. Against these flaws, the enormous gravity of scale compulsion and tactical challenges of the game wins easily. Since Rome has released the mechanics behind Total War have not seen significant changes. They've just had a facelift. That's because what was a brilliant system in 2004 is still brilliant now, whatever platform you choose to play it on. The next game I'm going to review is called Warbands Bushido. Warbands Bushido puts the player in command of a band of warriors from medieval Japan. The game is portrayed using a traditional hex grid battlefield, viewed from an isometric perspective. The designers strive for the look and feel of a traditional, if rather simplified, tabletop war game. In effect, you are playing a simulation of a war game, which in itself is a simulation of an actual warfare. The game tries hard to capture the feeling of tabletop conflict. The nicely detailed units are unashamedly unanimated, and there are no flashy attempts to hide the game's simple dice rolling mechanics. The boundaries of the map display the table edges, and you can even earn pots of paint to customize your units. Before battle, you can commence. You can need to create your warband of individual units. You can set up different bands of multiplayer games, single player scenarios, and arena battles. Each unit costs a number of your limited supply of war points to enlist. In multiplayer games, your experience levels sets the limit, whilst the solo scenarios specifically specify how many units you can enlist and the number of war points that you can spend. Just as significantly as the battles are the game's collecting aspects. You can use your hand-earned coins to purchase new shiny boxes of miniatures and crisp packets of order cards, all designed to get the obsessive collector slobbering with glee. The real pleasing aspect is that all purchases are made using hard-earned coins with not an in-app purchase in sight. The overall structure of Warbands Bushido is heavily influenced by Hearthstone. So fighting to gain achievements which earn you coins, which are spent to buy new units and cards. The random acquisition of these items is somewhat alleviated by the ability to turn them into magic power that can then be spent to purchase items of your choice. The multiplayer matchmaking arena battles, your constantly fluctuating level as you win and lose battles, are all very reminiscent of Blizzard's popular classic. Combat is quick and straightforward. The order in which units act depends on their on their agility, which also determines how far they can move. When conflict occurs, both units roll a number of combat dice based on their current toughness and levels. The dice have X's that represent misses, skulls that signify hits, and banners that are special hits that also improve morale. The players with the most hits reduces the total by the number of hits achieved by their opponents. The remaining sum is subtracted from the losing unit's toughness. Some units have armor points that will absorb damage. Players also have a selection of order cards that they can use as long as they have enough morale points. These have a range of interesting powers, such as Touch of the Wind, which thankfully isn't about of mild suggestion, but an opportunity to increase a unit's movement range. Each unit has a special ability card that also costs morale to use. For instance, the archer may be able to perform a powerful steady shot if he hasn't moved that turn. Later in the battle, special equipment cards will appear on the map, which can turn the tide of the battle. Some may find the choice of units a little bland and uninspiring, with the gunpowder wielding units probably the most unusual. The designers go for an historical theme. There are no sorcerers, creatures of folklore, or even any sneaky ninjas. Units are organized by rarity, which will determine the experience level they can reach and the corresponding new powers they can acquire. The tutorial is very brief and inevitably leaves a lot of questions unanswered. It gives an overview of the combat system, but to understand the actual structure of the game, you will need to make constant referrals to the rules section. Even then, there will be instances when things remain unclear. The different type of warbands are not adequately explained, and neither are the modifiers that for flanking or rear attacks. And rear attacks. There are also a few unwelcome hangovers from the PC version, and that have ninja'd their way over. The font size is too small, and the way in which windows are organized is untidy. Furthermore, the instructions refer to clicking the right mouse button, which doesn't really fill you with confidence. Another small annoyance is that on some levels, the scenery can obscure the dice rolls. Warbands Bushido is designed as a game for quick 10-minute skirmishes with strict time limits. Do not look too deeply for tactical challenges and be prepared for luck to play a significant role in battle outcomes. The developers should be commended for resisting the obvious urge to fill the game with in-app purchases, especially since the format of the game leads itself to such transactions. This does mean that you will have to invest a significant amount of time and effort if you want to create some powerful warbands. The 3 solo scenarios are a nice addition. They can be played across 3 levels of difficulty, but they cannot be played offline. Warbands Bushido is the sort of game that relies on building a solid following to ensure that finding a range of equally matched opponents is easy. Sadly, the game's reputation hasn't been helped by early problems. Mistakes have happened, but to charge for a game that is virtually unplayable is pretty unforgivable. And for a market nightmare, at least the developers have admitted their mistake and made efforts to put things right as soon as possible. Well, this brings us to another into another episode of MS Gamers Hut. As usual, I'd like to thank MS&Me Radio for giving me the opportunity to share my passion for games with my listeners, because without you, there would be no MS Gamers Hut. Next week, I will be reviewing fighting games. Goodbye, and keep gaming.